everyone. My name is Florian. I'm VP of Publishing at TapNation. I've been in the company for the past year and a half. I came in January 2020, and I've been responsible for the publishing of games such as Sneaker Art in June 2020, Giant Rush, one of our most popular success in December 2020, Webmaster in April 2021, and more recently, and what is going to be the subject of this presentation, Tippy in end of June, beginning of July 2021. So a quick brief on TapNation. We're a mobile game publisher. Obviously, to this point, we've released 13 hit games on the market, and obviously we still have a lot more games coming in the following months as well as next year, of course. So without further ado, let's jump straight in the presentation and start talking about Tippy. So let me share my screen with you guys. So the name of this presentation is Tippy, How to Reach the Top 2 months after launch. I think it is a very interesting topic in these days because a lot of publishers, including ourselves, obviously, are publishing more early on games than what the market used to do back even a year ago, 2 years ago. So let's talk about it a little. So first of all, let's talk about the genesis of Tippy, how it came about. The project was pitched by us, TapNation, to Cracker Studio through market analysis. So like seeing what the games were trending on the market and what we could do with this satisfying mechanic on stepping on objects. So one of our biggest inspiration, of course, is Wheel Smash, which is a game published by Rolik back, I think, like a year and a half or about 2 years ago, maybe. So based on the same type of satisfaction of stepping and smashing objects, but Wheel Smash was obviously focused on controlling a wheel, and Tippy, as you may know, is focused on stepping, like controlling a character, a human, and stepping on objects. So the first production cycle of the game was about 10 days. Obviously, the most crucial point was to make the stepping on the objects very satisfying, because without it, it wouldn't have been a success and a good CPI. And speaking of CPI, during the first test that we ran, I think that was back in May, if I'm not mistaken, we had a 40 cents CPI on Facebook and a 20 cents CPI on TikTok. TikTok has been one of our leading test platform, I would say, for the past few months, because I mean, I think this is something that is widespread at this point. CPI on TikTok tend to be less than on Facebook ever since the iOS 14. It's been the market has been changing, as it always does, basically. So the first challenges that we met while working on Tippy were obviously, most of you guys might know the 3 C's, which is a general rule in game design: controls, camera, and character. So character wasn't much of a challenge. I mean, in hyper casual, there's been this ongoing girl trend. Lots of runners are using girl characters these days. So to us, it felt like a no-brainer to use one, because it's both appealing to male audience as well as female audience. So the 2 challenges that we had mostly were about controls and camera. We had 2 possibilities when it comes to control: doing an hold on release mechanic, where you just have to hold and the leg automatically moves forward and upward, and as you release, it steps back on the floor, or the possibility of imagining a drag and release mechanic, where directly with your finger you would control the foot to move forward, basically. After running a couple of tests on it, A/B testing, we found out that hold and release was a better mechanic when it came to the game metrics, And I think it's just based on the fact that it's more intuitive, it's more accessible to a hyper casual audience. And I think the simplest and the least effort solution is usually the best in hyper casual. In this case, it was an all-day release mechanic. And when it came to the camera, we had the same question. Do we want to see the entire character, or do we focus simply on the legs, which also allows a bigger focus on the satisfaction on stepping out on objects. So once again, we tested both, this time on creative, so on the UA side, in order to see what was more appealing. And we found out that the focus on the legs was the most appealing to players. And that is because I think the satisfaction of stepping on objects is the core of the game. So it is only normal that we see better results with a more screen usage of that visual satisfaction. So first challenge is the most intuitive combo was the focus on the legs as well as the hold and release mechanic. But when it came to the content itself, we had also a few questions that came up. What people want to step on, which is an interesting question, I think. So we tested a wide variety of things. We tested food, we tested cans, insects, which was on CPI one of the best performing objects. Like we put cockroaches in the game, and stepping on that was very, very well performing on the CPI side, in the UA side. And after the first test, we included some different environments, like a beach environment, for example, where we included sand castles, we included water as well to avoid. So we tried to have a variety of context for the player to feel immersed in. This all led to an increase of playtime and a decrease of the CPI. The fact that we found about the insects led to the decrease of CPI, and just the inclusion of more variety to the game led to players feeling more engaged and more invested in the game. So after a month of production, we launched the game, so end of June, and the game had on Android day one retention of more than 40% at this time. And as we launched, the game reached top 70 in the US top charts games. But the interesting thing is that it had much better results in UA on other countries, such as Russia, where it reached top 20, Turkey, where it reached top 10. Obviously, Turkey, both Russia and Turkey are huge markets when it comes to hyper casual. Egypt, it reached top 3, and in the United Kingdom, it reached top 15. So to us, these were really performing UA results compared to US, which was a top 70 is good, but it's not the best, you know. So it gave us the idea of including a world tour feature in the game, because obviously the game was fitting to that sort of idea. So that's how it looked like. So you can see on the left the inclusion of New York City, in the middle with the Eiffel Tower. Obviously it's Paris, France, and on the right you guys can see Dubai. There's plenty more inside of the game. We've put Istanbul, Amsterdam, Los Angeles, plenty of destinations for people to enjoy. And it was also, aside from the fact that it could allow us to test much more different environments in the UA side, it also allowed us to monetize the game in a new way. Obviously through rewarded inclusion of this feature. If you wanted to go to X destination, you could watch a rewarded. Or we also implemented, after A/B testing, a system of tickets where you would pick up tickets, plane tickets on the track, and with a certain number of tickets. For example, I think New York City is a 5-ticket destination. So when you collect 5, you can unlock the destination. aside from that, what really helped on the UA side of things is the inclusion of the now very famous fidget puppet trend. So obviously at the time, the trend was pretty new in July 2021. There were a couple of games on the top charts, like top 5 charts in the US, and it was very trending, both on TikTok and the charts. So we thought, once again, the game is a perfect fit for that type of mechanic. So why not include it in the game and try it and see how it performs? And obviously, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Including such social trends in your game is always a good idea, both in terms of UA and in terms of engagements with players, because we're talking about games that touch millions of people from very different perspectives. So everything that is mainstream on the culture seems to work well on the hyper-casual audience. So as you can see on the left, the switch that we made from the original logo with the bomb to the new logo, which was representing a fidget. And on the right, you can also see screenshots of the inclusion of those puppet fidgets along the track directly. When it comes to monetization, the game, when it was launched, I would say was in a pretty rough shape in terms of monetization. The game had a very low rewarded impressions per user, despite having the inclusion of a shop, which wasn't the best, but we're going to talk about it. There were no bonus levels included in the game, and there was an unbalanced in-game economy at launch. 2 months after launch, obviously, we did runs of A/B tests every single week. We were setting up new features to test in the game and see how it was performing, or if it was improving the LTV, which luckily it did on a regular basis. So 2 months after launch, we successfully included an extensive customization of the character, very much inspired by, once again, a hit made by Rolik, which is High Heels, which I think is a tremendous example of how to do a good shop in a hyper-casual game. We included multiple destinations, which sort of act as bonus levels in the game, because they have unique items, have unique mechanics and obstacles in each destination. And we also included cosmetics items directly on the track to pick up, and obviously to get at the end of the track through watching a reward. This is a very known feature, I would say, these days, but it's still a very effective one, especially on runners. Tends to work pretty well. So after all those inclusions that you can see right here, with on the left, the shop that was inspired by High Heels, like I mentioned, with different styles, different level of rarity, with names inspired to fit the core context of the game, so stylish, glamour, and VIP, with dresses, hairstyles, tattoos, shoes, a lot of variety when it comes to that. The destinations in the middle, here you can see New York, LA, Paris, Egypt, and other destinations. And you can see on the right also, since I was the one managing sneaker at the time, obviously it came to my mind since we had a game that was very much focused on the feet of a character, to include popular shoes such as the Air Jordan 1, which is what we found out from testing UA, the most popular shoe that gets at least the most clicks and the most installs for sneaker. So it was a no-brainer to include directly in Tippy. And it all led to an increase of the LTV of 80%. And obviously, this is what is very key when it comes to the subject of this presentation. Working on the game every single week and trying to improve the LTV is super positive, both from a game metrics perspective, where you increase the retention, the playtime, the number of impressions, and as well on the UA side, because the higher your LTV is, the higher the UA can bid at higher prices and reach other audiences. It just allows the game to thrive even more. And that's exactly what it led to, with a very successful outcome this day. As I'm speaking, on Tippy, we have the lowest CPI to date. A couple of weeks back, 3 weeks back, I think the game reached the top 4 in the US. So much better performance compared to the top 70 that it originally performed at. We acquired 15 million users in 3 months of launch. We have the highest LTV to date, and obviously we're still running A/B test at this point, so we're still getting higher and higher. So it's not impossible that we reach even higher heights afterwards. And we also have the highest retention to date. So the game has just been performing better overall on all the key metrics that are important to an hyper-casual game. And before we get on to the Q&A session, I want to take the opportunity to thank Cracker Studio, which is the studio that worked on Tippy, because obviously I'm speaking about all of these features that we added and cool stuff and skins and shops and everything. This has been the tremendous work led by Cracker Studio, and I think they've done an amazing job on this game, both visually and gameplay wise. So yeah, thanks to Cracker Studio for leading the game to such heights and performing so much. Thank you very much for listening to me rambling on for about 20 minutes. I hope that you've learned some things in this presentation. I hope that it's been helpful, and it's going to be helpful for the games that you guys are working on, speaking to studios directly. And please don't hesitate to reach to me directly on LinkedIn if you have any questions, or if you want to take contact with someone at TapNation. I will be glad to answer you guys' messages. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And let's go to the Q&A session now.